China billionaire spoke only Chinese, begged someone to save his son's life. Only she understood, and the man stood in the center of the waiting room, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained, clutching an unconscious teenage boy against his chest. Doctors rushed past without stopping. Nurses shook their heads apologetically. Security guards watched nervously as his voice grew louder, more frantic. Have you ever been the only person who could help in a crisis? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She was walking past the chaos when a desperate father's voice stopped her cold. Not because of what he said, but because she was the only person in that crowded room who understood him. Have you ever been the only person who could help in a crisis? When every second counted and all eyes turned to you, Maya Johnson never expected her 2 years in Beijing to matter this much. Until a billionaire son lay dying, and she held his life in her translation. But what she didn't know was that speaking up would put her own life in danger. Blood-stained scrubs moved like ghosts through the sterile maze of LA County's emergency wing. But Maya heard only one voice cutting through the medical chaos. A father's desperate Mandarin echoing off antiseptic walls. The man stood in the center of the waiting room, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained, clutching an unconscious teenage boy against his chest. Doctors rushed past without stopping. Nurses shook their heads apologetically. Security guards watched nervously as his voice grew louder, more frantic. Help him, please. He's dying. The words came in perfect Mandarin, over and over like a prayer no one could answer. Maya froze halfway to the exit. Her community outreach shift had ended 20 minutes ago. She could walk away. Should walk away. This wasn't her problem. But the boy's face was gray, lips tinged blue. The man's eyes held terror Maya recognized. The same look her grandmother wore when the cancer diagnosis came back positive. Maya dropped her purse and pushed through the crowd. Sir, I understand you, she said in fluent Mandarin. Tell me what happened. Li Jingwei's eyes snapped to her face. Relief flooded his features as he switched to rapid-fire Chinese, explaining his son's sudden collapse during their business dinner. Maya translated for the medical team, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Within minutes, the boy was rushed into surgery. The emergency room returned to its controlled chaos, but Li remained fixed on Maya like she was his lifeline. You saved him, he whispered in broken English, his hand briefly touching hers. The contact lingered longer than necessary despite the clinical setting. You saved my son's life. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. Anyone would have helped. No. His dark eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. You chose to help. In my country, we believe such actions create bonds that cannot be broken. Would you risk getting involved when you could just walk away? Drop a woman raising hand if you've ever been the bridge between two worlds. Before Maya could respond, the surgeon emerged with news that should have been cause for celebration. But as Li listened to the update, something shifted in his expression. His grip on Maya's arm tightened. As the surgeon walked away, Li whispered something in Mandarin that made Maya's blood freeze. They followed us here. My son wasn't sick, he was poisoned. The richest man in the room just confessed to attempted murder, and she was the only witness who understood what he'd said. Li pulled Maya into an empty consultation room, his movements sharp with barely controlled panic. Through the window, she watched his son sleeping peacefully in recovery, for tubes snaking from his small arms. What do you mean poisoned? Maya demanded, switching to Mandarin to avoid curious ears. Li ran his hands through his perfectly styled hair, destroying the facade of control. My family owns half the commercial real estate in Shanghai. Last month, I discovered my business partner was using our properties for money laundering, billions of dollars flowing through fake transactions. Maya's community work had taught her to recognize desperation, but this was different. This was terror dressed in a $1,000 suit. When I threatened to expose him, he said my family would pay the price. Li's voice dropped to a whisper. The poison was just a warning. Next time, he won't let my son survive. Private security filled the hospital corridor like expensive shadows, their earpieces crackling with conversations in 3 languages Maya recognized and 2 she didn't. Lee noticed her watching them. "Hospital isn't safe anymore," he said, guiding her toward a supply closet. "We need to leave. Now." The small space forced them close together, Lee's chest pressed against her back as they hid from security cameras. Maya could feel his heartbeat through his shirt, matching the frantic rhythm of her own. His breath warmed her neck as he whispered instructions in Mandarin. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, hyper-aware of how his cologne mixed with the antiseptic smell of medical supplies. "Because you understand more than just my language." His voice held something Maya couldn't name. "And because they saw you help us. You're involved now, whether you want to be or not." The closet door creaked as footsteps passed outside. Lee's hand found Maya's waist, steadying her against him as they waited in the dark. The touch sent electricity through her despite the circumstances. "My son needs specialized treatment only available in Shanghai," Lee continued when the corridor quieted. "I could protect you there. Here, we're both sitting targets." Maya thought of her quiet life in LA, her predictable routine, her safe job helping families navigate social services. Everything normal and boring and suddenly precious because it was about to disappear. "I can't just leave the country with a stranger." Lee's laugh held no humor. 12 hours ago, I was a stranger. Now I'm the only thing standing between you and very dangerous people who don't like witnesses. Have you ever learned something you wished you could unhear? When knowledge became a burden instead of power. His phone buzzed with a text message. Lee's face went pale as he showed Maya the screen. The message was in Chinese, but Maya's translation made her legs weak. "We know she helped. Bring her to Shanghai, or we take her anyway." The black SUV pulled up to the hospital's back exit, just as Lee's security team surrounded them. Maya realized with crystalline clarity that her normal life had just ended. The only question was whether she'd survive long enough to miss it. 24 hours ago, her biggest worry was rent money. Now she was boarding a private jet to Shanghai with a man who could buy her entire neighborhood, and the assassins tracking them both. The jet's interior looked like a luxury hotel suite with wings. Cream leather seats that probably cost more than Maya's car. A full kitchen where uniformed staff prepared meals she couldn't pronounce. Crystal glasses that caught the California sunset through oval windows. Lee's son, David, slept in a specially equipped medical bay, monitors beeping steadily. The boy looked so young, so innocent. Hard to believe someone wanted him dead just to send a message. "First time on a private plane?" Lee asked, settling into the seat across from Maya. "First time on any plane." Maya gripped the armrests as they climbed above the clouds. "Usually when I want to see the world, I watch travel documentaries." Lee's smile was genuine for the first time since they'd met. "What made you go to Beijing?" "Wanted to matter somewhere." Maya watched Los Angeles shrink below them. "My grandmother raised me after my mom died. She always said the world was bigger than our neighborhood, but I never believed her until I left." Turbulence hit without warning, throwing Maya against Lee's chest. His arms came around her instinctively, holding her steady as the plane shook. For a moment, she fit perfectly against him, her head tucked under his chin. "Sorry," she mumbled, but didn't pull away immediately. Neither did he. "Flying makes everyone nervous," Lee said softly, though his voice had changed. Deeper, more personal. 30,000 feet above the Pacific, crystal glasses caught the sunset through oval windows while Maya tried to process how helping one boy had launched her into a world of private jets and international conspiracies. Lee's phone rang constantly during the flight. Conversations in rapid Mandarin that Maya only half followed. Business jargon mixed with what sounded like military planning. Each call made his expression darker. "What aren't you telling me?" Maya finally asked. Lee looked out the window at the endless ocean. "My business partner, Chun Wei, isn't just stealing money. He's connected to people who make problems disappear. Permanently." "How permanently?" "My lawyer's car exploded yesterday morning. My accountant missed his daughter's birthday because someone broke into his house." Lee's hands clenched into fists. Chen's message is clear. Anyone who threatens to expose him becomes a target. Would you trust a stranger enough to fly halfway around the world with them? Why has your gut instinct overruled your logic? Maya's phone had no signal over the ocean, but she imagined her grandmother waiting for her usual evening call. What would she say? How do you explain that helping someone speak to a doctor landed you in an international conspiracy? Lee's business phone buzzed with an encrypted message. His expression shifted from worried to terrified as he read. "What is it?" Maya demanded. Lee showed her the screen. Even translated, the message sent ice through her veins. The boy wasn't the real target, Lee. They wanted the woman who would translate for him. They wanted Maya. As they descended toward Shanghai's glittering skyline, Maya realized she hadn't stumbled into this situation by accident. Someone had been waiting for exactly the right moment, the right person, the right skills. Someone had been waiting for her. She thought Shanghai would feel foreign, but stepping off that plane felt like walking into a trap designed specifically for her. The city hit Maya like sensory overload. Neon signs and characters she could read flickered against glass towers that disappeared into smog. 8 million people moved through streets that pulsed with energy she'd never experienced. Even at midnight, Shanghai felt more alive than LA at noon. Lee's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building that probably had its own zip code. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city's ancient soul wrapped in glass and steel modernity, much like the man watching Maya take in the view. "Welcome to my home," Lee said, but his voice carried tension that hadn't existed on the plane. Maya noticed immediately that they weren't alone. Men in expensive suits lingered in corners, speaking quietly into earpieces. Security cameras tracked their movement through the apartment. Whatever privacy they'd found at 30,000 feet had vanished. "Business associates," Lee explained, following her gaze. "They insisted on additional protection after we landed." David had been whisked away to a private medical facility the moment they arrived. Maya missed the boy's presence. He'd been their buffer, the innocent reason for everything happening around them. A woman approached from the kitchen area. Tall, elegant, wearing a dress that cost more than Maya made in 6 months. She spoke to Lee in rapid Mandarin, her tone sharp with questions Maya pretended not to understand. "Maya, this is Wei Lin, my business manager," Lee said carefully. "Lin, Maya Johnson. She saved David's life." Lin's smile was perfect and completely empty. She switched to flawless English. "How fortunate that someone with your particular skills happened to be at that hospital." The words sounded like an accusation wrapped in politeness. Maya felt every eye in the room studying her reaction. "Lucky timing," Maya replied evenly, though her pulse quickened. Lee guided Maya away from Lin's scrutiny toward the guest wing. As they walked down the hallway, his hand found the small of her back, protective, possessive. The touch sent warmth through her despite the obvious tension. "Your friend doesn't trust me," Maya observed once they were alone. "Lin doesn't trust anyone. It's what makes her good at her job." Lee opened the door to a bedroom that looked like a 5-star hotel suite. "But you're right to be cautious. In my world, paranoia keeps people alive." Maya set her small suitcase on the silk bedspread, feeling ridiculous. Everything she owned could fit in one bag, while Lee's guest room had more square footage than her entire apartment. The explosion of shattering glass from the main room sent them both diving to the floor. Lee's body covered Maya's as gunshots echoed through the penthouse. Shouting in multiple languages filled the air, Chinese, English, and something else Maya couldn't identify. Lee helped Maya out of her jacket after the shooting stopped, his fingers tracing a scratch on her shoulder where glass had cut through the fabric. Both of them shook from adrenaline and proximity. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough with concern. "I'm okay." But Maya wasn't okay. Her hands trembled as Lee examined the minor wound, his touch gentle despite the chaos around them. Have you ever felt safer with someone dangerous than you did in your regular life? Share your thoughts on protective versus possessive behavior. Lee's security team reported the all clear, but his expression remained dark as he read an encrypted message on his phone. The text contained just 4 words in English. "She speaks their language." Maya realized with growing terror that her language skills weren't just useful. They were the reason she'd been targeted all along. Someone needed her to understand something. The question was what, and whether she'd survive long enough to find out. Fluency in Mandarin saved a boy's life, but now Maya learned it could also get her killed because she'd accidentally overheard secrets worth billions. The traditional tea house sat hidden between modern skyscrapers like a secret from another century, steam from jasmine tea curling between them as Lee explained why powerful men feared one American woman who spoke their language. Chen Wei's operation spans 3 countries. Lee began, his voice low despite the private room. He uses my real estate holdings to move money for people who prefer their transactions invisible. Maya's hands wrapped around the delicate porcelain cup, seeking warmth against the chill of realization. How much money? Enough to buy governments. Enough to start wars. Lee's fingers drummed against the wooden table. When I discovered the scheme, I recorded a conversation where Chun discussed killing anyone who threatened to expose them. You have evidence? Had evidence. My lawyer was supposed to deliver it to international authorities. Lee's expression darkened. His car exploded before he could make the meeting. Maya thought about David, so young and innocent, used as a weapon against his own father. About herself, pulled into this nightmare because she tried to help. Why target me specifically? Lee leaned forward, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. Because Chen's clients speak multiple languages during their meetings. They assume no one can follow their complete conversations. The tea house felt smaller suddenly, walls pressing closer as Maya understood. You think I overheard something at the hospital? I know you did. Chen's man was there, speaking to his contact in Russian while you translated for the medical team. Lee's hand covered hers on the table. You heard them discussing the next phase of their operation. Maya tried to remember the chaos of the emergency room, voices blending together in multiple languages. She'd focused on Lee and David, but background conversations had registered subconsciously. Teaching Maya to use chopsticks, Lee's hands guided hers, both pretending the lesson required so much touching. His fingers were warm, steady, patient as he showed her the proper grip. Like this? Maya asked, hyper-aware of his breath against her cheek as he leaned closer. Perfect. His voice had dropped to something intimate despite the public setting. When did you last choose to do what was right instead of what was safe? How do we find courage in impossible situations? Maya set down the chopsticks, decision crystallizing. What do you need me to do? Lee's eyes search her face. I need you to remember everything you heard at that hospital. Every word, every language, every voice. And if I can't remember, then Chen's clients will make sure you never have the chance to try. Maya's phone rang, interrupting the moment. The caller ID showed her grandmother's number from Chicago, but when Maya answered, the voice that spoke was male and spoke perfect Mandarin. Bring me the woman, or the old lady dies. Lee was already standing, throwing money on the table as Maya's hand shook. Her grandmother's voice came through the phone, scared but strong. Baby girl, don't you worry about me. These fools picked the wrong old lady to threaten. The line went dead. Maya stared at the phone, her safe world collapsing completely. We're gonna get her back, Lee said with quiet intensity. But first, you need to tell me everything you remember from that hospital. Everything. When death threats target the people you love, you discover what you're truly willing to sacrifice and what you refuse to give up. The safe house overlooked Shanghai's traditional district, where ancient temples sat between modern buildings like secrets hiding in plain sight. Rain hammered the windows as Maya paced the small apartment, her phone clutched uselessly in her hand. My grandmother raised me after my mother died, Maya said, switching between English and Mandarin in her distress. She's all I have left. She's 87 years old, and these people took her because of me. Lee coordinated with his security team from the kitchen table. Laptops and phones spread across the surface like a command center. Every few minutes, he'd look up to check on Maya, his expression mixing professional focus with personal concern. We have people in Chicago, Lee assured her for the 10th time. My contacts are tracking down everyone connected to Chen Wei. We'll find her. But Maya couldn't sit still, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except her grandmother's voice on that phone call, scared but defiant, protecting Maya even while being threatened. This is my fault, Maya whispered, finally collapsing into the chair across from Lee. I should have walked away at the hospital. Should have minded my own business. Lee closed his laptop and gave Maya his full attention. You saved my son's life. Whatever happens next, that was the right choice. Was it? Because now David's safe in a private hospital and my grandmother's being held by criminals. Maya. Lee's voice was gentle but firm. Look at me. When she raised her eyes, Lee reached across the table to take her hands. We're going to get her back. I give you my word. The promise hung between them, loaded with implications Maya wasn't ready to examine. Li Junwei was the most powerful man she'd ever met, but he was also the most dangerous. Getting close to him meant accepting that violence and beauty existed in the same space. Rain pounded the safe house windows as Shanghai's storm matched the tempest in Maya's chest. Fear for her grandmother warring with an attraction to Li that defied logic, timing, and safety. I don't know how to do this, Maya admitted, gesturing at the controlled chaos around them. I help families navigate social services. I don't handle international conspiracies. Li stood and moved around the table, sitting on the arm of Maya's chair so he could look down at her. You handled everything perfectly so far. I am terrified. Good. Fear keeps you alive. His fingers traced the line of Maya's jaw, the touch gentle despite his calloused hands. But don't let it paralyze you. Maya leaned into the contact, craving comfort in the middle of chaos. Lee's thumb brushed across her lower lip, and suddenly the space between them felt electric. I'm not fragile, she whispered against his mouth, pulling him closer despite everything falling apart around them. Show me how you see me. Lee's response came in reverent touches and whispered Mandarin endearments that needed no translation. He kissed her like she was precious, dangerous, strong. His hands mapped her body with the patience of a man who understood that pleasure could be found even in the darkest moments. On the silk sheets of the safe house bed, Maya discovered that surrender could be a form of power. That vulnerability shared became strength multiplied. Lee worshipped her body while she found refuge in his protection, both of them desperate for connection amid the destruction surrounding them. What does it mean when someone protects not just you, but everyone you love? Share your thoughts on love in crisis situations. As dawn broke over Shanghai, Lee's phone delivered an ultimatum that changed everything. Trade places with the woman at the old dock. Come alone, or both she and her grandmother die. But Maya was already reaching for her clothes, determination blazing in her eyes. I'm not letting you face this alone. Sometimes the only way to spring a trap is to walk into it with your eyes wide open and pray your backup plan works. The abandoned shipping warehouse loomed against Shanghai's industrial skyline like a monument to broken promises, its rusted metal walls hiding enough shadows for an army of secrets. Maya and Lee approached on foot, leaving their security team positioned around the perimeter. The morning fog rolled off the Huangpu River, making the dock feel isolated from the rest of the city. Remember the plan, Lee murmured as they walked toward the warehouse entrance. Whatever happens, you stay behind me. Maya's response was interrupted by the appearance of Chun Wei, flanked by 6 men in expensive suits who moved with military precision. Lee's former business partner looked nothing like the photographs Maya had seen. Younger, harder, with eyes that assessed threats like a predator. Li Junwei, Chen called out in Mandarin. You brought the woman. Good. Where's her grandmother? Li demanded, his body positioning itself between Maya and Chen's men. Chen smiled, pulling out a tablet that showed live video of Maya's grandmother tied to a chair in what looked like a shipping container. The elderly woman appeared unharmed but defiant, glaring at her captors with the same fierce independence Maya remembered from childhood. Safe for now, Chen replied, but her continued health depends on Ms. Johnson's cooperation. Maya stepped around Lee, ignoring his protective gesture. What do you want from me? You remember more than you realize about the conversations you overheard at that hospital, Chen said. My clients need to know exactly what you heard, what you understood. I told you. I was focused on translating medical information. Chen's laugh held no warmth. Ms. Johnson, your language skills extend beyond Mandarin. Our research shows you speak Russian, Korean, and Arabic as well. Very useful in my line of work. Maya felt tense beside her. She'd never mentioned her other languages to him, acquired during her community work with refugee families. But somehow Chen knew everything about her background. During the tense standoff, Maya became hyper-aware of Lee's presence beside her. Their shoulders touched as they stood back to back, feeling each other's heartbeat and breathing in perfect synchronization. Even in mortal danger, her body responded to his proximity. "You want to know what I remember?" Maya asked, buying time as Lee's backup plan unfolded around them. "I remember conversations about shipping schedules, cargo manifests, and account numbers. Lots of account numbers." Chen's expression sharpened. "Which account numbers?" Before Maya could answer, the warehouse erupted in controlled chaos. Lee's security team moved with precision, surrounding Chen's men while Maya and Lee took cover behind shipping containers. Gunfire echoed off the metal walls, but it ended as quickly as it began. When the shooting stopped, Chun Wei was in custody, his men disarmed and zip-tied on the warehouse floor. Have you ever had to trust someone completely in a dangerous situation? When has partnership meant survival? The victory celebration was premature. Maya's grandmother's voice came through the warehouse speakers, but the words made everyone freeze. "Baby girl, they've been planning this longer than you know." The boy's poisoning was just the beginning. Chen's capture had been too easy. Maya realized with sinking dread that they'd walked into exactly the trap their enemies wanted, and her grandmother was about to reveal why. The truth hit harder than bullets. Maya hadn't stumbled into this conspiracy by accident. She'd been chosen for it years ago. Grandmother Johnson sat in the rescue helicopter like a queen holding court, her weathered hands steady despite the chaos, eyes sharp with secrets she'd carried for 30 years. Maya gripped the safety harness, mind reeling from her grandmother's revelation. "Your mother didn't die in a car accident," grandmother said over the helicopter noise, her voice carrying the weight of buried truth. "She worked for the State Department, specializing in international money laundering cases." Maya's world tilted. Everything she believed about her family, her history, her random presence at that hospital, crumbled in an instant. Lee sat across from them, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding as grandmother continued. "Chun Wei killed your mother 28 years ago when she got too close to exposing his operation. You weren't at that hospital by accident, baby girl. You were there because Chun needed you to overhear those conversations." "That's impossible," Maya whispered. "I chose to work at that community center. I chose my schedule." Grandmother's smile held sad knowledge. "Chen's been manipulating your life since you returned from Beijing. The job placement, your work schedule, even which hospitals your outreach program visited. He needed someone with your exact language skills in that exact place at that exact time." Lee's hand found Maya's, anchoring her as the revelation hit. "He wanted you to witness something specific. A test," grandmother confirmed. "Chen needed to know if you'd inherited your mother's ability to piece together complex financial crimes from overheard conversations. Your translation work at the hospital was never about saving David. It was about proving you could do what your mother did." Maya felt Lee's fingers tighten around hers, both of them processing the implications. Her attraction to him, their intense connection, how much of it was real and how much was manipulation. "But there's something Chun doesn't know," grandmother continued, pulling out a faded photograph. "Your mother and Lee's father weren't just colleagues investigating the same case. They were partners, close partners." Lee's gasp was audible as he stared at the photograph. Maya's mother shaking hands with a young Chinese businessman in what was clearly more than a professional relationship. "That's my father," Lee breathed. "They knew each other before we were born." Maya stared at the photograph, seeing her mother's face in a new light. Young, determined, working alongside Lee's father to expose the same corruption that now threatened their children. "Chen killed them both," grandmother said quietly. "Made it look like accidents 27 years apart. But he never found what they discovered together, evidence that could bring down his entire network. Have you ever discovered your life wasn't what you thought it was? How do we handle revelations that change everything?" Maya's head spun with questions, but Lee's voice cut through her confusion. Where's the evidence? Grandmother smiled, the expression transforming her weathered features. Hidden in plain sight, just like your mother taught me. Chen's been searching for it in all the wrong places because he never understood how deeply our families were connected. As they flew towards safety, Maya realized that falling for Lee wasn't coincidence, it was legacy. Their parents had trusted each other enough to fight impossible odds together. The question was whether Maya and Lee were strong enough to finish what their parents had started. The helicopter banked toward downtown Shanghai, carrying them toward answers that would either save them or destroy them completely. Love at first sight makes more sense when you learn your families have been connected for decades, but it makes the danger twice as personal. Have you ever discovered that your life wasn't really yours? That every choice you thought you made was actually part of a bigger plan? Maya Johnson was about to learn that some coincidences are too perfect to be accidents. The private dining room overlooked Shanghai's ancient temple district, where traditional rooflines created waves against the modern city's geometric precision. Past and present lived together here, just like Maya and Lee's intertwined destinies. But Maya's grandmother sat across from them, holding a secret that would change everything they thought they knew about their connection. Your mother didn't just teach English in Beijing, baby girl, Grandmother Johnson said, pulling out a faded photograph. She worked for the State Department. Cultural exchange was her cover story. Maya's hand shook as she stared at the image. Her mother, young and beautiful, shaking hands with a Chinese businessman in what looked like an official ceremony. Lee's sharp intake of breath told her he recognized the man. "That's my father," Lee whispered, but he told me he never worked with Americans during that time period. Grandmother Johnson's smile was sad but knowing. "Both our families have been keeping secrets, it seems. Your parents negotiated trade agreements that kept peace between our countries for 20 years. They saved thousands of lives by preventing conflicts before they started." The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of Shanghai traffic. Maya felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Everything she thought she knew about her mother's death, her own childhood, even her decision to teach in China, none of it was coincidence. "The people trying to kill us now," Lee said slowly, "they're not just angry about current business deals. They're settling old scores." "Exactly," Grandmother Johnson nodded. "Your parents' work stopped a lot of powerful people from making money off conflict. Some of those people have very long memories." Maya stood up abruptly, needing to move, to think. Lee followed her to the window, where Shanghai's lights stretched to the horizon. The city that had brought them together was also the place their parents had first met, first worked together, first changed the world in small but important ways. "So we were always meant to find each other?" Maya asked, not sure if the idea comforted or terrified her. Lee's hand found hers, warm and steady. "I don't care if it was fate or coincidence. I care that you're here now, that we're fighting this together." Something in his voice made her turn to face him fully. His eyes held a question she'd been hoping for and dreading in equal measure. "Maya," he said, voice rough with emotion, "I know this is crazy timing. I know we're in the middle of something dangerous and complicated. But I also know that life is short and tomorrow isn't promised." He dropped to one knee right there in front of her grandmother, pulling out a ring that caught the city lights like captured stars. "Will you marry me? Will you build something beautiful with me, the way our parents did? Will you choose this crazy, dangerous, wonderful life we've stumbled into?" Maya looked at this man who had protected her family, trusted her with his son's life, followed her into danger without hesitation. She thought about her mother, who had been brave enough to build bridges between worlds. She thought about the foundation they could create together, the lives they could change. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, I choose this. I choose you. I choose us." As the ring slipped onto her finger, Shanghai glittered below them like the future was full of possibilities. But Maya had no idea that their real adventure was just beginning. What happens when two people decide to fight the world together? When love becomes a weapon more powerful than money or politics? The answer would surprise everyone, including Maya and Lee themselves. The most dangerous enemies were familiar faces and know exactly where to aim for maximum damage. Maya should have seen it coming, should have noticed how perfectly everything had fallen into place, how smoothly their escape had gone, how easily they'd gathered evidence. But sometimes the people closest to us are the hardest to see clearly. The evidence room in Lee's corporate headquarters buzzed with activity as lawyers, investigators, and security personnel built cases that would topple governments. Maya focused on the financial documents spread across mahogany tables, looking for patterns that others might miss. "Something's wrong," she said, pointing to a series of transactions. "These payments don't make sense. They're too clean, too obvious. It's like someone wanted us to find them." Lee looked up from his phone call with international authorities. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we've been played," Maya said, her stomach sinking. "Look at the timing of these transfers. They happened after we started investigating, not before. Someone's been feeding us information to lead us in a specific direction." The conference room door opened and Chun Wei, Lee's oldest business partner and closest friend, walked in with coffee and updates. Maya had grown to trust Chun over the past few weeks. He'd been the one to help them escape Shanghai initially, the one who'd provided safe houses and security. "How's the progress?" Chun asked, setting down the coffee cups. Maya watched his face carefully as she explained her theory about the planted evidence. Chen's expression remained perfectly concerned, perfectly supportive. "Too perfect. That's troubling," Chen said. "Who do you think might have access to plant evidence like this?" It was the right question, asked the right way, with the right amount of worry. And that's when Maya knew for certain. "Someone very close to the operation," she said, never taking her eyes off Chun. "Someone we trust completely." Lee was still looking at the documents, but Maya saw the moment he understood. His shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly, and his hand slowly moved toward the panic button under the table. Chen's mask slipped for just a second, a flash of cold calculation replacing the warm concern. But it was enough. "How long?" Lee asked quietly, his voice deadly calm. "Since the beginning," Chen replied, dropping all pretense. "Your father cost my family everything with his American partnerships. Peace is expensive when you profit from conflict." Maya's mind raced. If Chun had been working against them from the start, how much of their evidence was real? How much of their safety was an illusion? "The boys poisoning?" she asked. "Real enough. But we knew you'd be there, Maya. We knew you'd help. We needed you to translate not just language, but trust. We needed Lee to bring you to Shanghai willingly." Lee's laugh was bitter, and the assassination attempts. Theater. Close enough to feel real, never close enough to actually harm our valuable assets. Chen's smile was cold. "You've both been very useful in identifying who our real enemies are." The room suddenly felt smaller, the walls closer. Maya realized they weren't just in danger, they were trapped. "What do you want?" "Lee demanda." Chen's phone buzzed with a message. His smile widened as he read it. "Actually, we want Maya to make one more translation for us. Tomorrow's international summit. Unless, of course, you'd prefer we return to Chicago and have another conversation with Grandmother Johnson." Maya's blood turned to ice. The summit. World leaders. A translation that could start or prevent a war. And they had just walked into the perfect trap. With 12 hours until international catastrophe, Maya and Lee had to choose between exposing the truth and saving their own lives. They couldn't do both. Maya stared at the clock on the hotel wall. 6:47 a.m. In less than 6 hours, she would stand before world leaders and translate words that could change history. The only question was whether those words would prevent a war or start one. Lee paced the small room like a caged animal. They'd escaped Chen's trap by sheer luck and Maya's quick thinking, but now they were on their own with no backup, no resources, and no time. "The summit starts at noon," Lee said for the third time. "If we don't show up, they'll use the false documents to frame both our countries for the trade violations." Maya pulled up the real evidence on her laptop, the files they'd managed to save before Chen's betrayal was revealed. "But if I go in there and translate their lies, people die. Trade wars become real wars. And if you don't go, your grandmother dies." The words hung heavy between them. Chen had been clear about the stakes. Maya's compliance in exchange for her grandmother's safety. It should have been an easy choice, but Maya couldn't stop thinking about all the other grandmothers who would lose grandsons in a war built on lies. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, car waiting downstairs. Time to choose, Maya. Personal or global. You can't save both. Lee sat beside her on the bed, taking her hands. Whatever you decide, I support you, but I won't let you face this alone. Maya looked at this man who had become her anchor in the storm. If we do this, if we walk into that summit and expose everything, we might not walk back out. Then we make sure the truth gets out, even if we don't. Maya's mind raced through possibilities. Chun expected her to break, to choose family over principle. But he'd underestimated what she'd learned from her mother's legacy, from her grandmother's strength, from Lee's unwavering support. I have an idea, she said slowly, but it's risky and it requires perfect timing. Lee's eyes brightened with hope and determination. Tell me, what if we give them exactly what they expect, and then flip the script? Maya pulled up the summit's live broadcast information. The whole world will be watching. If I can get to that podium, you'll expose everything in front of everyone who matters. Maya nodded. But Chun will have security, backup plans, ways to stop me before I can speak. Lee's smile was fierce. Then we better make sure he's too busy dealing with other problems to focus on stopping you. Dawn crept across Shanghai's skyline as Maya and Lee finalized their desperate plan. In 6 hours, Maya would either prevent an international crisis or become the trigger for global conflict. The scariest part? Even if their plan worked perfectly, the most dangerous moment would come after the truth was revealed. Because powerful people who profit from lies don't give up easily. Chen Wei had spent months planning for every possibility except one. Maya Johnson refusing to stay quiet. What happens when someone small decides to stand up against something massive? The world was about to find out. She walked into a room full of world leaders with a target on her back, carrying the truth that could prevent a war, if she lived long enough to speak it. The Grand Assembly Hall stretched before Maya like an ocean of power and possibility. Flags from every major nation lined the walls, and delegates in expensive suits filled rows of seats that had witnessed history being made. Today, Maya would either join that history or become a cautionary tale about speaking truth to power. Chen Wei stood near the podium, confident and relaxed. He nodded to Maya as she entered, believing he'd already won. Behind him, security guards positioned themselves strategically around the room. Maya counted at least 6 men whose hands stayed suspiciously close to concealed weapons. Ms. Johnson, the summit coordinator, approached her. You'll be translating for the trade delegation. Please take your position. Maya walked to the translator's booth, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through the glass, she could see Lee in the audience, his face calm, but his hands clenched in his lap. They'd agreed on signals, backup plans, emergency exits. But now, facing the reality of their desperate gamble, Maya felt the weight of every possible consequence. The Chinese trade minister began speaking, his words flowing through Maya's earpiece. She was supposed to translate his prepared remarks about cooperation and mutual benefit. Instead, she listened to the real conversation happening through her hidden recording device. Chen's actual instructions to the minister about blaming America for trade violations that China had orchestrated. Maya's finger hovered over the microphone switch that would broadcast her voice to the entire assembly. One flip of that switch, and she would either save or destroy everything. The minister paused, looking expectantly at Maya through the glass. The entire room waited for her translation. Maya took a deep breath and flipped the switch. Ladies and gentlemen, she said clearly, what you just heard was not about cooperation. What you heard was a lie designed to start a war. The room erupted. Delegates jumped to their feet. Security moved toward Maya's booth, and Chen's face went white with fury. But Maya kept talking, her voice carrying over the chaos. I'm Maya Johnson, and I'm here to tell you about a conspiracy that goes back decades. About how certain individuals profit from conflict between our nations, and how they've manipulated both sides to create the crisis you're trying to solve today. Lee stood up in the audience, pulling out his phone to live stream Maya's revelation to social media. Other delegates began recording. Within seconds, Maya's words were broadcasting to millions of people around the world. Chen shouted orders to his security team, but Li had anticipated this. Fire alarms suddenly blazed throughout the building. Li's distraction to create chaos and delay Chen's response. The real documents are being uploaded to international news outlets right now, Maya continued, speaking faster as security approached her booth. The evidence shows that the trade violations blamed on China were actually orchestrated by private individuals seeking to destabilize both our economies. Security reached Maya's booth just as she delivered her final line. My name is Maya Johnson. If something happens to me, remember that the truth doesn't die with the messenger. The broadcast cut off as security pulled Maya from the booth, but it was too late. The damage was done. The truth was out there, spreading across the internet faster than Chen could contain it. As they dragged her through the corridors, Maya caught Li's "I won last time." His expression promised that whatever happened next, she wouldn't face it alone. Later, in a secure room while international authorities sorted through the chaos, Li held Maya close as news reports confirmed their success. The conspiracy had been exposed, Chen was in custody, and the summit was restructuring around actual cooperation instead of manufactured conflict. We did it, Maya whispered against Li's chest. We actually did it. You did it, Li corrected, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. You chose the world over your own safety. That's the kind of courage that changes everything. When was the last time you saw someone risk everything for what was right? Share your thoughts on finding courage when the stakes are highest. Saving the world apparently comes with job offers, but Maya had to decide if she wanted to be a hero or just wanted to be happy. 6 weeks after the summit, Maya's phone wouldn't stop ringing. The State Department, the United Nations, 3 different international corporations, and at least 5 news networks all wanted to hire the woman who had exposed a global conspiracy on live television. Li watched her decline another job offer as they sat in their Shanghai apartment, looking out at the city that had brought them together. The UN position would mean traveling constantly, Maya said, setting down her phone. The State Department wants me in Washington. The corporations want me to be their cultural consultant, which sounds like a fancy way of saying they want to use my story for marketing. What do you want? Li asked, the question he'd been patient enough not to ask until now. Maya was quiet for a long time, watching traffic move through the streets below. I keep thinking about that moment in the hospital when I decided to help translate for your son. I didn't do it because I wanted to change the world. I did it because someone needed help and I could provide it. Li nodded, understanding where her thoughts were leading. All these job offers, they want me to be some kind of international hero. But what if I just want to help people understand each other? What if I want to prevent the next crisis instead of having to fix it? Li's smile was warm with pride. Then we build something that does that. Maya turned to face him fully. Maya, I've spent my whole life making money. It's easy when you know how the system works. But these past few months with you, I've learned what it feels like to use resources for something that actually matters. Li pulled out his tablet, showing Maya architectural plans and financial projections. I've been working on something while you've been fielding job offers. A foundation, international language, and cultural education centers in major cities. Places where people can learn not just words, but understanding. Maya stared at the plans, seeing schools and community centers, translation services, and cultural exchange programs. This is incredible, Li, but it would cost millions. I have millions. What I didn't have was purpose. Li took her hands. You gave me that. Let me give you the resources to change the world the way you actually want to change it. Maya looked at the foundation plans, then at Li's hopeful face, then out at Shanghai's endless possibilities. Equal partners? Equal partners, Li confirmed. Your vision, our resources, shared decisions about everything. Maya's phone buzzed with another job offer, but she didn't even glance at it. I like the sound of that. 3 months later, the Johnson Lee Foundation for Cultural Understanding opened its first center in Shanghai, with plans for locations in Chicago, New York, and Beijing. Maya had turned down fame and fortune to build something lasting with the man she loved. Have you ever chosen building something meaningful over accepting something impressive? Share your thoughts on partnership versus recognition in the comments below. He saved her life in Shanghai, but she saved his soul in return, and now he wanted to make that salvation permanent. The foundation's rooftop garden bloomed with flowers from both Chicago and Shanghai, east meeting west in petals and promises. Maya stood among the jasmine and roses, watching the sun set over the city where she discovered love could be stronger than fear. Lee found her there as he had every evening for the past month, but tonight felt different. There was something in his eyes that made Maya's heart skip. Nervous energy mixed with determination. The board approved the Beijing expansion, he said, joining her at the garden's edge where Shanghai's lights were beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness. That's wonderful, Maya replied, but she could tell he had more on his mind than foundation business. They've been living together for 6 months now, building their relationship alongside their organization. Maya had never been happier, but she'd also never felt more aware of how quickly happiness could disappear. Their love had been born from crisis and tested by danger. What happened when life became normal? Maya, Lee said, his voice softer now. Do you remember what you said in the hospital? About speaking up when someone needs help? Of course. You spoke up for my son, then for both our countries, then for people who couldn't speak for themselves. Lee turned to face her fully. Now I need to speak up for myself. Maya's breath caught as Lee dropped to one knee among the flowers, pulling out a ring that caught the last rays of sunlight like captured fire. I love your courage, he said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. I love your compassion. I love the way you see connections where others see barriers. I love that you chose to help a stranger's child and ended up saving us all. Maya's eyes filled with tears as Lee continued. But mostly, I love that you see me. Not my money, not my power, just me. The man who was lost until a woman from Chicago showed him what it means to build something beautiful instead of just acquiring things. The rings sparkled between them, but Maya was looking at Lee's face, memorizing this moment when everything felt perfect and possible. Maya Johnson, will you marry me? Will you be my partner in everything? Love, work, life, whatever crazy adventures we stumble into next. Maya thought about her grandmother's words about recognizing good men. She thought about her mother's courage in building bridges between cultures. She thought about the foundation they'd created and the life they were building together. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, Li Zhongwei, I will marry you. As the ring slipped onto her finger, Maya kissed the man who had taught her that the best love stories aren't about rescue. They're about recognition, about seeing each other clearly and choosing to build something beautiful together. The foundation's garden filled with the sounds of celebration as Lee's son, fully recovered and visiting for the weekend, cheered from the doorway. Maya's grandmother, visiting from Chicago, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. So, Lee murmured against Maya's ear as they were surrounded by family and joy. Ready for the next adventure? Maya looked at her ring, at the foundation they'd built, at the future stretching ahead of them. With you, I'm ready for anything. What makes a perfect proposal? Share your thoughts on love that builds rather than rescues in the comments below. 2 years after a desperate father's voice stopped her in a hospital corridor, Maya Johnson Lee stood before the United Nations, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness change the world. The UN Assembly Hall stretched before Maya like an ocean of possibility, flags from every nation bearing witness as she placed one hand on her growing belly and approached the podium. 2 years ago, she'd been a quiet community worker from Chicago. Today, she was addressing world leaders about the power of understanding. My name is Maya Johnson Lee, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the massive hall. 2 years ago, I was nobody special, just a woman walking through a hospital who happened to speak Mandarin. In the audience, Lee watched with pride as his wife commanded the attention of presidents and prime ministers. Beside him sat Maya's grandmother, dabbing happy tears, and Lee's son, now calling Maya mom and serving as their foundation's youngest volunteer translator. I helped translate for a scared father and his sick son, Maya continued. I thought it was a small kindness. I had no idea it would lead to exposing international conspiracies, preventing wars, or falling in love with the man whose son I helped save. Gentle laughter rippled through the assembly. Maya's story had become legend, but hearing her tell it in person still moved people. Today, our foundation operates in 12 cities across 6 countries. We've trained over 3,000 cultural interpreters, not just to translate words, but to translate understanding. Because here's what I've learned. Most conflicts happen not because people disagree, but because they don't understand what they're actually disagreeing about. Maya's hand moved unconsciously to her belly, where she and Lee's first child grew. Their baby would be born into a world where her parents had built bridges instead of walls. The boy I helped save that day. He's now 16 and fluent in 4 languages. He wants to be a doctor so he can help other sick children. But more importantly, he understands that his life was saved not by wealth or power, but by human kindness crossing cultural lines. Lee smiled, remembering how his son had insisted on learning English specifically to thank Maya properly. Now the teenager served as a bridge between cultures himself. My grandmother always told me that good people recognize other good people, no matter what language they speak. She was right. Kindness is the one language everyone understands, even when nothing else makes sense. Maya paused, looking out at the sea of faces representing every corner of the globe. So here's my challenge to every leader in this room, and to everyone watching around the world. Look for opportunities to translate understanding, not just words. Speak up when someone needs help, even if it's inconvenient. Choose connection over comfort, because you never know. The small kindness you show today might prevent tomorrow's conflict. The assembly rose in sustained applause as Maya concluded her speech. Later, in their hotel suite, Lee held Maya close as they watched news coverage of her address spreading across social media. Millions of people heard that speech. Lee murmured against her hair. How many lives do you think you'll change? Maya's hand found his on her belly. I don't know, but I know this baby will grow up in a world where people like us proved that love really can bridge any distance. Lee kissed her temple. Your mother would be proud. She'd be amazed. Maya corrected with a laugh. Her quiet daughter addressing the United Nations, building international foundations, married to a Chinese businessman. This isn't the life she planned for me. It's better, Lee said, because you chose it yourself. So what would you do if one moment of kindness changed your entire life? Would you trust it? Would you run from it? Or would you build something beautiful from it? Tell me in the comments what moment changed everything for you. If this story of courage, connection, and cross-cultural love touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe for more tales that prove love really can conquer all, even international conspiracies. Share in the comments which moment in Maya and Lee's journey resonated most with you. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is speak up when someone needs your voice. Until next time, keep believing in the power of unexpected connections.